Hey, real quick before we start the video, I'm doing a One Piece box tournament tonight as of this video dropping. So if you guys are interested in this tournament, make sure to check out the link in the description. Should be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you guys there. Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have two large regional tournaments that happened this past weekend. We have the PPG webcam regional that was over 1,000 players. I'm pretty sure it's the largest One Piece event that's ever happened, at least largest online event that's ever happened, and in the North American region. So that's really really cool for this one. And then we also have the Latin American July regionals as well, which was just shy of 500 players and all in the OP03 format. So we're gonna go over a bunch of this stuff, and real quick before we start going over this, first shouts to both of the TOs for not only running the events but also for giving me the deck list to give to you guys, and also all of these deck lists are going to be on my website Eggman Events, which is linked in the description below. So if you want any of these deck lists, they are all there. Also, some of them do have, as you'll see, like for Clay and for Daniel, they do have deck profiles associated with them. So if you guys have more that you guys know of, make sure to let me know in the comments. I'll make sure to link them on my webpage for people who want to see these lists and just kind of everything else. But really cool. I know that the PPG one was also streamed, linked here as well if you guys want to see those games, and that should be it. So we're going to jump on into it, and this is the last weekend essentially before the restriction list hits. So one copy of Newgate, one copy of Marco Blocker, as well as one copy of Radbeam as the maximum for any deck there. So, and we do see that Newgate was really popular. It was essentially the same 1 in 3 essentially almost for both events. So that's pretty crazy for that, as well as it won both events, and we're going to look at them in a minute. They're pretty close to the same list too, which is interesting. So I think with the restriction list, Zoro is going to be hit a little bit, but Newgate for sure is going to have to do something different, probably more of like the Straw Hat Aggro version too, but I digress. So obviously this is going to be a little bit of dated results since it's based on a format that's not going to exist anymore, but I do think it's going to be good to look at all these decks and see how everyone did. So we're going to kind of pick and choose between deck lists between both. We're going to do my best to kind of have an even spread for all of them, but in general, congrats to all the players for this, especially like the PPG one. I was in this one. I got literally 100th place with this one with Rob Lucci, so a lot of fun for this one. It was a really great stream as well, and it was a really great event in a lot of ways. So we're going to go over the top placing list, starting off with our first place ones. So this one is Chris Sox from the PPG event with their Newgate, as well as we have Jose, who won the Latin American one. So honestly, if you look at these two decks, they're very, very similar. The biggest change is that Chris decided to run the Mass Deuce, as well as instead of like the Whitebeard Pirates, which I get that kind of makes sense. I know that sometimes you just need a turn 2 play, and especially like if you're not kind of developing a turn 4 play, that the Mass Deuce is really good at just kind of getting some early board control, especially if you're kind of worried about like maybe Trafalgar Law or making sure that they kind of start a little bit slower. This could be a good card for that, as well as it's just a 2K, so it's just very flexible. And again, like most of the time, like Newgate doesn't really have a lot of like turn 1 and 2 plays, so to help that out, I could see that for sure and get that value when you need to, as well as on this version, I'd say this is more standard for what we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks. Whitebeard Pirates has been more popular just because you are able to use it to not only revive either of your Marcos, but off your life, it's able to help you find cards. Not that you get a lot of cards from your life either, but it's just helps that consistency early game, and we have enough Whitebeard Pirates in the game right now that it's worth running in that way. So obviously neither of these builds can be run since it does run 4 of each of the newly restricted cards, but I think Newgate can still survive. It's going to probably be more of like the Straw Hat version that we saw in OP02, but we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. So congratulations to both Chris and Jose for getting first place in both of these events. Next up we have Clay, and also we're going to look at Jake's build too, which is a little bit different. It's running the air door attack as well, but I did do an interview with Clay for his I recommend checking out that video if you got more of the in-depth view for it, but it's kind of running like I like to call like the hybrid build of 4 of the Spandems and 4 of the brand new, just because they're very good. Not only are they searchers, but even if they whiff, which can happen unfortunately, but just the fact that you are able to use these to just be bodies on the board and get some like trade pressure against some of the aggressive decks like Zoro and Law, which can cause some headaches and be like an issue deck in a lot of ways. I think both these cards are very good for that, and then also just the consistency of fighting. So I also did run Rob Lucci for this event. My list was I think like 45 out of 50 similar. So I think Rob Lucci is very strong. I think a build something like this has a lot of good matchups right now, and it's very good. And it's going to see how it goes into the next meta. And so that was Clay's, and then we also have Jake's list here, which is more of the CP9 variant of it, just because of the air door tech. Which again, like air door, you have to be a little bit careful because it is a little bit risky in the sense if you do whiff off of it, you just don't get anything. You just wasted 4 Dawn for nothing. I mean, you put 5 cards into your trash, but otherwise pretty bad for that one. But there is a couple of hybrid options for this, just in the sense that we do have a couple copies of brand new, only 2 copies. We also have 2 copies of Kuzan, which is such a good card. Kuzan is so good for this deck, and just helping you get some cost reductions, especially paired up with Kaku. You can use it to get rid of a 7 cost. So if you turn for Kuzan, like 4 Dawn Kuzan earlier, and then you just don't swing with it, and then you establish like a Blue No or something the next turn. If they play like a big 7-drop Charlotte Linlin, you can attack with Kuzan, use Kaku to get rid of it, and then it's very strong there. So do like those interactions. I think it's strong for the deck. We also are seeing like the Rob Lucci, which shows up occasionally. It's definitely more of like the air door version of the deck, but I do think this can get some value. The fact that it has rush and it's a 7K, so it's kind of clunky to get rid of, is nice there too. And then also the Kuzan at the top end. Not a lot of Rob Lucci's I see run this card, but I do get why it's tempting. It's just kind of cloggy in hand, but and also 4 whole copies of Sakazuki, which is a lot. You're gonna probably see this pretty often by turn, your 6 Dawn turn. So anyways, this is the air door version of this. This is Jake Trons who was able to top with it. Only Rob Lucci's were able to top on the PPG event, the North American event. So, but the Latin American event did have a smoker as well. So there was black on both tops. So there we go there. Next up we have our Zoros. So we have Daniela's, and as well as, let me make sure, this is Paul's version here too. So moderately similar as well. I would say, though this is kind of, we're going to look at Paul's version real quick. So Paul's is, I'd say like the standard kind of more mid-range version of the deck that really can't exist as much anymore, since it does kind of depend on getting the value off of the Marco, off of Newgate, as well as the Radical Beams. I can say that you can probably still try to do this deck if you really want to in this version of it, but I think like the Marco blocker gets so much defense power for you, and like just being able to get like the sustainability off these cards and buying an extra turn. It's just really nice in the fact that you get so much additional pressure from just how many like tiny swings you get and everything else that your opponent just has a hard time keeping up with it. So I don't think this version will exist as much, but we do have more of what like the aggro leaning one that Zoro has kind of been known for the previous sets. So a lot more of the rush. We do have like the Marshall D Teach, which might get bumped up a little bit more after Marco kind of leaves for it. So I still think you play 1 copy of Marco and 1 Rad Beam in these decks, but you might have to change up your ratios and find maybe some more red event cards for Buggy to use as well. So I do think that's going to change. I mean, Guard Point's still a really good card in its own right, but that plus 3K does get out of some awkward situations, especially if they're trying to attack you with like a like Katakuri yellow. Like it goes to 7K, so being able to get to 8K with 1 card is pretty nice there. But I think this is kind of where we're going to see Zoro probably be a little bit more in the next couple of weeks, is more of like this aggro edge of it. No big 9 drops. You're all, obviously using red events for the power they get there, but we'll see what they shape up like. But I think Zoro, even though some of it cards got hit, it's going to be a very strong deck anyways. So there is their list there. And then next up we have Daniel with Charlotte Linlin, which I'm really happy to see this one top. They also did a deck profile that I found, so make sure to check out their video and subscribe to their channel. I highly recommend it. Links in the description too. I'm going to throw it in there. But this is my second favorite deck right now. I think Rob Lucci barely surpassed it. It's very, very close. And the only reason I don't like Charlotte Linlin, I've said it 100 times, is that I'll sit next to or sit across from a Trafalgar Law, and I just can't beat that matchup. It's very, very tough. So, but I will say this is probably like the greediest version of Charlotte Linlin I've ever seen. We have 4 copies of the Rush Katakuri, 2 copies of the Charlotte Linlin from the Star deck, 4 whole copies of the 8-drop, which is excessive in my mind, and then 4 copies of the Linlin. So a lot of cards without counter, including the Perospero. We don't see any copies of Charlotte Cracker in this deck, which is a little absurd, and just kind of everything. And then you kind of have like the regular cards we see. But also 4 copies of Thunderbolt, no copies of the Sovereignty, which is interesting, are no Soul Pocus, which I think Soul Pocus is a little bit more of a decision card for you. But this is a very different build than I've really been accustomed to. I might have to try it out as well. I mean, again, it went 9-1 in a 10-hour tournament, so that's really impressive in their own right. So, but Daniel also went over their matchups and everything in their video. So if you want more information and his thoughts on there, make sure to check it out, and congratulations there. And while we're on Yadal, we're going to look at 2 of the Katakuri lists. So this one is Yadal's, and we also have Michael's version here. Somewhat similar as well. I will say like the Katakuri version usually tries to play a little bit more of the tempo. So we do see like the smoothies in both builds of these as well. Cracker, I think, is a mainstay. And so for Yadal's version, it's kind of... This is kind of leaning almost to more of what I see for like the Charlotte Linlin builds, including like the Peckhams and the Baron Tomago. And I've kind of mentioned this before too, but I didn't think Peckhams was a good card. But there are just so many situations where I was forced to go first, and if I didn't find Perospero, like turn 2 felt just really, really bad. So having 2 more cards to 2 more ratio cards for in the Peckhams to potentially just have a play on turn 2 is nice. Having it 5k is nice, and it just means that you can potentially attack over something, especially if you're playing against Zoro, and then they have to try to attack into it to get rid of it too. So I think that's good. Baron Tomago kind of the same way. He might be a little bit less favored now with Newgate assumedly getting out of the meta, since the 6k does make a big difference, but it's fine for what it is. I still like running a couple copies of him, and I think that's great. But otherwise, we have the Sovereignty Thunderbolt and the top end, and we'll see like a 3-2-3 split, which is a lot less aggressive than the Charlotte Linlin we saw there. Also, there's no Brûlé in this one, which is interesting too. So there's that list, and then we also have and also for the record, these are the only 3 yellow decks that topped for both events. There are only these 3, 1 Linlin and 2 Katakuris, 1 for each event. So I think that's a little bit surprising for how much I know that people are on yellow. And it's going to be interesting to see if that, what the changes with with Newgate getting out of the meta a little bit. So, but this is, I'd say, more of the Katakuri builds that I'm used to running, in the sense that it's more kind of tempo in the fact that we're running the Cracker, Perospero, and Smoothie. We have the Brûlé as well, and then we also have the Daifuku, which is really nice for getting some additional card draw when needed. None of the 7-drop, but we do have 3 of the 8-drop and 4 of the 10-drop, and then the Sovereignty and the Thunderbolt too. So this is definitely more of the build that I'm a little bit more used to. I'd say it's the quote-unquote like safer build, but there's obviously a lot of reward you can get from running something like this, with which can be a little bit greedy. So again, I do like the Peckhams though. Add Peckhams. Just 2 copies. You're fine. You just have more turn 2 plays. It helps your consistency, and it's a plus 1k, so you're not even worried about it. So anyways, that's the rest of the yellow block for this one. Congratulations to all 3 of our yellow players who topped this weekend. Next up, we have Dakota's Doffy list, which is the only blue deck that topped either event, which is a little surprising, I would say. So, but it is a little bit what we've been seeing for the last little bit. Obviously, we did get a little bit of support in set 2, and we do have like a generically good card in 3,000 Worlds in set 3. Just being able to bottom deck something that costs 5 or less is very strong, especially like Marco's, even like the new 5-drop and the soon to be limited one. These are just very good cards to get around some of these effects. There's also like Bluno, if you're playing like Rob Lucci or any of the black decks. If you can bottom deck the Bluno, that feels really bad in a couple ways. Not only do you not get the revive, but it means you take out a CP9. Even like doing that with Kaku at the same time. So this is a really strong card for Doffy, I think. But otherwise, we just see the kind of pieces we normally see. And more or less, when I see people play Doffy, it really just depends if they're able to see Mihawk on curve, right? That's usually the game ender if you're able to see that. You do kind of have some issues with 8 costs in this deck or above, since there is not like any inherent cost reduction either, but I think that's very strong for the deck. So he's great if you're able to see him on curve like that. Otherwise, it's a little bit rough. But the other kind of thing I like about Doffy right now too is that he wants to go first, and I think the majority of decks like to go second right now. So I could be wrong on that, but more or less like Newgate or even like LOL wants to go second. Zoro kind of depends either way, and most black decks definitely want to go second, and I think yellow too, since both of those decks usually have better even curves and their boss monsters are even numbered. So being able to have a deck that kind of fights against the current, and so you almost always get to go first, or like you get to go first more often, even if you lose the dice roll, I think is kind of important for you there. So otherwise, not anything too crazy from there. I know Dakota is a very strong player, and big congratulations for him getting this Doffy in this top, not only 32, but top 16 for this event. So congratulations there. Next up, we have our 2 law decks we're going to talk about. We did get a good amount of laws in here. So this is Jose's list, and we also have Nguyen's list here. So we don't see a lot of differences in some of these Doffy's lists anymore. I'd say that most of them are about 40 cards the same at this point. A lot of them playing just a lot of the same 1-drops, Curly Dedan and Brooks, and then you're kind of like the mid top end is where you make some decisions. I will say, like, these lists here aren't running the Brook film card, which is really interesting. I know that a lot of lists that I've been seeing recently at least put a couple copies, since it is findable off the Nami and can play like a Zoro 3-drop off of them, either one of them, or even if you just have to play like a Brook or something. I think that's somewhat there. The 1-drop Nami, I think, is a decision point some people play, since it is, it can help you with your Dawn management a little bit easier, but it's not searchable off the Nami. It is off the Dan, which is nice. And then also like the Star Deck Zoro is a decision as well. And then it's interesting that both of these lists were running the Basil Hawkins at 2 copies. And when I've been seeing this deck is that sometimes there are just ways that you just don't have like any big bodies to really contest the board anymore. So I think Basil's is a pretty strong option there. And also the Punk Gibson in Jose's list is really interesting at a single copy. So it's not a card that I would necessarily think would be in Trafalgar Law, so I could definitely see myself playing into it because it's a little bit unexpected there. So otherwise, we've been seeing most of these lists for a very long time. Obviously, they're all OP02 cards mostly. This one, what besides Makino and Curly Dedan, is all a set 1 deck, which is interesting, as well as I think pretty much this one too. Vista added at 1 copy, but I digress. So anyways, these are lists there. Congratulations to all of our Trafalgar Law players. There are quite a few for both these events, but specifically to both Jose and Fee. Next up, we have our only purple deck to get into the top is Magellan here. So really interesting to see that Magellan did get a top. This is from the Latin American event. This is Alexis's build and or Lexi's build for this one. And there is like a little bit of support that you got in this build or in the set. We did get like the Mino Rhinoceros and as well as the Mino Zebra. So getting more cards that you can play off your Sadie is pretty good. But generic, you also get the Gum Gum Jet Gatling, which is nice. The fact that it does have a really good trigger that you do get to ramp off of it, as well as if you can, you can discard a card and give something plus 3k counter. So I have been actually liking these event cards a lot recently. I think they have a lot of good power for them, and since they have like really good triggers too, more of the times like you just don't feel bad playing them for that kind of effect. So, anyways, I think this is you do get a lot of good tempo for this deck, and I think if a lot of people were playing Newgate, which they were, and you can use Magellan to keep them off their curve, it's a strong ability for that. It is still kind of clunky. We do have 3 copies of Queen and King, which King can be really great for getting rid of some like 3-drops in Trafalgar Law. It's just a shame that there's so many the 5-drop Trafalgar Laws are the cards you really want to try to remove, and it's not as easy for this card to do so. But we also do have the Kaido to potentially do that too, and if you are able to get to Kaido late game and get not only just the ramp but just like the rush and pop from him, I think a lot of decks do have a hard time removing this outright. So I think he is kind of a good boss monster. It's just Purple just doesn't have like a lot of the strengths that other colors have right now. That's a real shame. So, but anyways, just really big congratulations for their finish there, and again for getting purple into this topping event. So next up, we got 2 more events. We got our only green deck is Kozuki Oden, and for the record, I think we got every color. We got our blue deck, we got our purple deck, we got a green deck, we obviously have red, we have some yellow and some black too. So really cool that we did actually see all the colors get a top between both events, even if some of the colors got very, very few showings. But with Alvaro's Oden, obviously Oden isn't even the premier green deck, I would say. I think more people are usually on Kid, and I know a couple of people have been testing out Kuro since it's the newer green deck, but Oden is definitely a deck that you have to keep your eye on, because he does have, honestly, a really strong leader ability of being able to say, activate once per turn, you can trash 1 Wano Country type card from your hand, set up to 2 of your Dawn cards as active. So being able to get the additional Dawn can be very, very strong for, continuing plays. I've seen it a lot of times with the Eustace Captain Kid, being able to use it to, on turn 8, play it, discard a card, and then you can use its, not only attach a Dawn underneath it, you can play something for free, and then also play like a Capone game beige or something like that. So I think that's very strong for the deck to be able to do those plays. We also do have the Krieg, being able to use this guy to get rid of cards, and then also if you need to like get some Dawn open for like the double attack, you can there too. So this is a really good card to have green have like a win condition outside of Useless Kid. So unfortunately, it's not like something that's pitchable off your leader effect from that, but we have that. We also have like the Dendro, which is a really strong card. The only issue with it is that it's restricted. It's hard restricted to Oden, which is very weird in a game that has very little like hard leader restrictions. But obviously, you want to play this in this deck, and you do get a lot of advantage from it. We have like the Yamato from OP03, very strong. We have Carrot. And just everything else. So no Kiku in this build, but I don't think it really needs it. And also no the Kinemon for this either, which was also kind of leader locked to Oden, but I also would agree that it was kind of clunky for what it was and didn't get a lot of advantage for it. So, but really interesting to see Oden get their top, and congratulations to Alvaro for their finish there. And the last deck we're going to talk about is Smoker. So this is Carlos's 16th place Smoker for the Latin American event. And I've been playing a lot of black lately. I do really kind of like what it's been doing in this game, and I do also think that Smoker might be getting a little bit better as the meta kind of evolves in the post restriction list. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to continue to top, or maybe even like rival Lucci as a leader right now. But he's very, very good at removal, which if you're playing against like Law or like even like Zoro, which again I think those are the 2 big baddies right now, there is some potential for it. Only issue with this is that you have some issues against like Big Mom, since they have such like obviously big decks and just like big high end in their deck rather. So with Isho, you do get some potential removal. They have to kind of play around this card. If they don't, they're just gonna like discard 2, which is really strong. We're also playing Kuzan in this build too, which is great. I still don't know how I feel about Kuzan. We talked about this like 10 minutes ago, but he is like a really, really good card if you're able to establish him. The issue is being able to have time to establish him, and if there's going to be so much aggro and just value decks, it's going to be it might be a little expensive to do so. But I do like the idea of the card, and whenever he hits the field, you feel really, really good about it. So then again, Sakazuki, we have 2 versions of Garp too, so you have a lot of removal in this deck. 4 copies of Kuzan, we have Khalifa, and we don't have any of the high end of CP9, which I do think you do have to want to, I don't know, it's really, really tempting to play the CP9 stuff, though. But I do like the Garp. The Garp ad is really, really nice for this deck. It's very good into, like, early plays against, like, again, Law and Zoro. It gets really good removal, and it just feels strong in its own way, too. So, anyways, that is going to be this list. Congratulations to Carlos, and that is going to be it for me as well. So, make sure to check out my website, linked in the description, for all of these events and more for the OP03 format. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, better do it now. You've made it this far into this video, so you must like my content, and that's going to be it for me. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.